In the previous part of this video, you were introduced to UFO-related incidents where the witnesses could no longer say exactly what happened to them because they did not survive the encounters. Their lives ended in the most horrific way imaginable, based on the evidence and facts, although no one has been able to establish beyond doubt what happened to them. In the second part, you will see 5 more cases that are most likely to be linked to UFOs, or at least to some phenomenon unknown or unrecognized by science. Dead body in Billings Reservoir. Brazil, Sao Paulo, the 29th of September, 1988. One bright spring day, a boy was walking along the banks of Billings Reservoir after school when he spotted a large flock of vultures on the opposite bank. At first, he thought they were prowling around a dead animal. As he got closer, he started throwing stones at the birds so he could see the carcass, but he saw something quite different from what he expected. It was the badly mutilated body of a middle-aged man. The boy was so frightened, he immediately ran to the nearest village and breathlessly told the villagers what he had seen at the reservoir. The authorities and firefighters, after assessing the situation, all agreed that this was something completely different from what they had encountered in their work so far. Locals immediately started gossiping and waited for official news from newspapers or TV, but strangely, the media did not report anything about the incident, neither then nor later, so the case slowly faded into obscurity. Then, 6 years later, in 1994, the forensic experts' reports with photographs were somehow leaked or made leaked, and some newspapers even reported the details, albeit cautiously, although they could not give the name of the victim because they would not release it to the press in view of his family. But the details about the condition of the body were so disturbing that authorities wondered what or who exactly could have done this to another person, or whether it was even possible for one person to inflict such injuries on another. Well, let's see what was in the leaked autopsy report. The eyes of the unfortunate victim were removed and the eyelids were cut off. The tongue was removed and the left ear was cut off. The lips, the flesh around the jaw and neck were cut off, and a significant piece of the jawbone was missing. The armpits each had a hole 4 centimeters in diameter. Similar holes were found in the legs and arms, and the flesh, including all the muscles, was removed from the body. When the specialists attempted to examine the victim's internal organs, they were shocked to find that they had been removed as well. And the chest and stomach have shrunk inwards as a result. On the belly, where the navel should have been, there was another hole. Studies have concluded that the organs, along with the organ tissues, were sucked out through these holes by some kind of suction mechanism. The victim's colon was also removed, leaving a huge hole instead of a rectum. It has also been suggested that the methods used to inflict injuries on the victim were quite simply beyond the expertise and technical capabilities of man. All the wounds showed no bleeding, suggesting that the blood had been drained from the body before or at the same time. All the operations were carried out with such perfect precision and technology that the experts agreed that they were dealing with an alien experiment. And the most painful and disturbing aspect of the case is that there was no trace of anesthetic or paralytic in the body, so the unfortunate man was performed without anesthetic, and the victim was probably fully conscious during the procedure. The top of the skull was found intact, and the cranial cavity was excavated to reveal signs of cerebral edema, indicating an agonizing death. At that time, cases of animal mutilation were already widely known, which regularly made farmers' lives miserable and caused them enormous damage to their livestock. The animal's injuries were strikingly similar to those of the man. At the time of these incidents, there were quite a lot UFO sightings reported from the area where the dead animals were found. Would we really be just experimental rabbits in the eyes of an alien species to whom we are no different from animals? A stirring thought and not to be dismissed. But before I go on, I would like to ask, if you like the content you see, like the video and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss out on upcoming videos. Thank you very much. the fateful night of Abel Boro. Brazil, Panorama, the 17th of October, 1981. The area around Panorama, Brazil, was terrorized in October 1981 by strange flying vehicles, known locally as chupas, or suckers. According to the descriptions of numerous witnesses, these vehicles were of different shapes. Some described them as rectangular, shooting ray-like beams of light into the area they flew over, others as circular or spherical objects. The incident might not have become public knowledge if there had been no fatalities. On the fateful day, Abel Boro and his friend Rivamar Ferreira were on a night deer hunt, which was not unusual in the area, as they had a better chance of shooting a wild animal at night than during the day because it was much cooler and the animals were coming out. While they were lying in wait, there was a great brightness. After their first surprise, the two men set off in the direction of the light to find its source. It was then that they caught sight of a circular object rotating on its own axis, the light from which was so bright that it was almost daylight. The two men stood stunned even as the UFO began to approach them. Rivamar Ferreira, during his interrogation, told that a beam of light came out of the UFO and completely enveloped him and his friend. Abel screamed in terror, and Ferreira, perhaps at the last moment, ran back into town to call for help. When the man returned to the scene with Boro's family members, it was already too late. Boro was lying dead on the ground. His body was almost completely white, although they had no idea why at the time. Police Chief Geraldo dos Santos Maguela later confirmed rumors that almost no blood had been found in the victim, practically drained from the man. Since the locals called the UFOs that terrorized them chupa, it suggests that there may have been a similar incident in the area before, although I have searched hard and have not been able to find any specific case. Some reports claim that several people have been attacked by these mysterious objects and drained of their blood, similar to Boro's, but these are claims for which there is very little information on the internet, and the accounts differ. The UFO hunt of Carl Hunrath and Wilbur Wilkinson. United States, California, Los Angeles, the 11th of November, 1953. In November 1953, electrical engineers Carl Hunrath and Wilbur J. Wilkinson paid for an hour's rental time for a small plane at Gardena Airport in Los Angeles, California. Hunrath flew the plane, even though he was only an amateur pilot and had little knowledge of the area. The day before, he had called some people he knew and told them he was leaving because he believed a UFO had landed nearby, controlled by alien beings whom he and his friend had allegedly communicated with by radio, known only as the Masarians. The two men thought that after the meeting they would be taken to another planet, the home planet of the aliens, called Maser. So he and his friend Wilkinson decided to meet the creatures in any case. Whether their plan succeeded or not is unknown, as the two UFO enthusiasts were never seen again. However, the fact that their aircraft and bodies were nowhere to be found inspired the Los Angeles UFO community to declare that yes, they did indeed leave Earth. A week after their disappearance, the Los Angeles Mirror tabloid published an article giving credence to the abduction theory. Reporters interviewed Wilkinson's wife, who said that her husband and Hunrath believed that the end of the world was near. According to Wilkinson, the Masari were planning to invade Earth. Wilkinson was obsessed with UFOs and covered the walls of his study with photos of UFOs and drawings of strange pictograms supposedly written in an interplanetary language. Of course, the doubters of the story were far more numerous than those who believed the UFO story and came up with the theory that the two men must have flown to Mexico. Although their claim was quickly refuted, as they had a maximum of 3 hours of fuel, which was still too little for the trip, they argued that Hunrath was an inexperienced pilot and had not been flying for a very long time. Whatever actually happened, their bodies, or even the remains of the plane wreckage, have never been found, so it looks like the mystery will never be solved. Joao Prestes Filho and the Boitata. Brazil, Araçariguama, March 1946. One Monday, the 44-year-old Joao Prestes Filho, at that time a farmer, decided to gather his 3 friends for a fishing trip on the Tietê River. He warned his wife, Silvina, that he would be home late, but she didn't mind, as she and her relatives were going to a street carnival anyway. After a busy day, Joao returned home at 7 p.m. He found the house empty and dark. His wife was not home yet. As he was about to enter the house, a flash of light came from somewhere and hit him full on. He felt an immediate burning sensation running through his body from head to toe. With a burning body and unbearable pain, Joao walked barefoot for several kilometers until he reached the house of his sister Maria, who lived next to the main church in the city, while shouting at the top of his lungs, "The light! The light!" Neighbors who gathered around the man at the loud shouting said they were horrified to see his condition and said it was the most horrific sight they had ever seen. According to the testimony of his cousin Virgilio Francisco Alves, Joao threw himself on his sister's bed, shaking and crying, and told Virgilio it was not a worldly thing but an invisible thing. The man, seeing his cousin's condition, believed Joao and later said, "Joao's skin was completely reddened. His hands and face were the most burnt, but his hair was intact, as was his clothing." Those present were horrified to see the man's arms almost stripped of muscle. Cecilia da Rocha Fonseca, who witnessed the events, said in a later interview, "I saw his body. His fat was literally melting. Pieces of flesh were falling off, and then everything was falling off. The burns were very bad." Ana Maria das Dores, another witness to the horror, said, "When I saw him, I thought he was dead. I noticed that the hairs on his arms weren't burnt, just his flesh." Until the man was taken to hospital, a neighboring nurse tried to attend to him, but was unsuccessful. She was unable to do anything with such injuries. Joao was finally taken to the hospital in Santana de Parnaíba, where, despite the best efforts of the doctors, he died after 9 hours of suffering. According to the autopsy report, the third-degree burns on Joao's body were not caused by any kind of fuel or similar. There was no evidence of soot, and his hair or clothes were not burnt. Only the exposed parts of the body were affected, such as the head, neck, hands, and lower limbs, so the coroner ruled out the hypothesis of burns caused by high-temperature fluid, as it is highly unlikely that other areas were not affected by the splashes. Moreover, the body did not smell of burning or any other substance. The tests highlighted that there was no trace of alcohol in the man's body. According to Joao's death certificate, the cause of death was burns. But the question on everyone's mind was, what had hit Joao? The man's house remained intact, and he was the only one targeted. His condition was similar to that of people exposed to high levels of radiation, but his internal organs were not damaged, and if it had been a real radioactive wave, his clothes would not have protected the covered parts of his body. The UFO community was quick to seize the case to try to come up with some meaningful explanation, as all the characteristics of the phenomenon pointed to an extraterrestrial nature. The study, however, sparked controversy among ufologists because some believed that these beings were part of what they called a chain of angels who wanted to save humanity, not harm it. The other side, however, saw them as an advanced intelligence roaming space in search of traces of intelligent life on other planets, with the aim of studying these beings or even colonizing their planet. Those in favor of saving humanity claimed that they had investigated the case of Joao Prestes Filho and concluded that it was nothing more than an accident or a crime. But those who advocated the principle of the subjugation of humanity were certain that the incident could have been an extraterrestrial attack. Of course, neither side could prove their theory. While ufologists believed in the extraterrestrial theory, the locals spoke of an old legend of a serpent of light, which they called Boitata. This mythical creature devours alive anything and everything it touches, but locals also spoke of fireballs that glowed so brightly they were impossible to look at. The inhabitants were afraid of these phenomena, and when they saw them, they would cover their eyes with their hands, because it was believed that otherwise the lights would follow them and kill them. And legends, as we know, always have a basis. Perhaps that was how the deeply religious people there tried to explain their experiences, which were in fact extraterrestrial in origin. The Indian UFO terror. India, Lucknow, the 13th of August 2002. 20 years ago, in the 13th of August 2002, an issue of the Victoria Advocate, a newspaper article entitled UFOs Attack and Cause Unrest in India, appeared. Above the caption is a picture of a man with multiple injuries to his face. You might think it was just the local newspaper trying to come up with a fantastic story to boost circulation, but the event was reportedly covered in hundreds of newspapers around the world at the time, and even on local radio stations. Let's see what happened in India in August 2002. Around the end of July 2002, villagers began to see strange flying objects in the sky. Two types of UFOs were reported. One was a disc-shaped or spherical object with flashing lights that moved rapidly. The other was described as a spacecraft that most resembled an insect, was huge, and moved very slowly. While the smaller UFOs were only seen around Lucknow, the insect or cricket-shaped craft was reportedly so large that people could see it from as far as 80 kilometers away. According to UFO experts, this huge spacecraft was probably the mothership, while the smaller disc-shaped UFOs flew out of it. Nothing much happened for a few days after that, but then the UFOs started attacking people. 7 people died, and many of them suffered burns, so the UFOs were known locally as Munochwa, which means face burners or the face scratcher. Doctors confirmed that the assailants' injuries were electrical burns caused by electricity passing through the body. One of the named victims was a middle-aged man, Ramji Pal, who was attacked with a laser beam, which ruptured his stomach and caused his death after 2 days of suffering. A 53-year-old woman was similarly attacked and her forearms were charred. Another alarming fact is that over a period of a single week, more than 20 people disappeared within a 10-mile radius, never to be seen again. Incredible story, right? According to the newspapers, the panic was so great that 10,000 people gathered outside the police station demanding the authorities to take action against the attacking aliens. But as expected, despite numerous incidents and reports, the police refused to hear of an alien attack and eventually dispersed the crowd. Although several people died, many were injured or disappeared, they refused to accept this as concrete evidence of an alien attack until actual video footage of these UFOs was found. 6 video recordings of the spacecraft were later said to have emerged, but we searched the internet in vain and could not find them. In any case, one of these shots was taken by a district judge, who is the only person to have captured the insect-shaped UFO hovering over a field. And 4 days later, 5 more images of the smaller disc-shaped UFOs were found, captured by 5 different cameras, confirming that they were indeed flying objects that had been cruising over the villages at night. With no help from the authorities, the terrified villagers formed a sort of protection squad, which patrolled the village after dark. Their aim was to prevent future alien attacks, although how they would have done this, by what means, I have no idea. But let's see how the highly educated government officials and the skeptics came up with theories to explain the events. Some have claimed that the hysteria was caused by certain cricket-like bugs. Yes, you heard me right, bugs. To support this theory, a new species of cricket has even been found in the area, which has been named Munochwa. However, experts have confirmed that these crickets are completely harmless and cannot hurt humans, and they do not emit any light. Not to mention that there is no other species of insects on Earth that can cut open someone's stomach. Other skeptical experts have argued that the spherical objects that people have seen were in fact ball lightning. This, of course, does not explain the beetle-shaped vehicle, and the ball lightning is also a rather rare phenomenon, which does not survive for more than a minute or two. Besides, it is absolutely impossible that the appearance of the ball lightning can always be repeated in the same place, in the same village every night, not to mention that ball lightning does not emit red, green, and blue flashing lights. Still others call the sightings mass hysteria and say that it is all a figment of imagination, which they say is confirmed by the lack of education in the villages. Somehow all skeptics forget the facts and the victims, the injured and the missing. As a result of these events, or higher circles, the Army deployed large numbers of troops and increased surveillance of airspace to keep an eye on the region. The media simply stopped further coverage, most likely on the orders of the government, and the story slowly faded into obscurity. Many people to this day doubt the veracity of the incident, although let's be honest, it's not surprising. When you hear about incidents like the UFO invasions we've seen in the movies, the least you can do is doubt, even if you know what's going on behind our backs or above our heads. That was to be the second, concluding part of the fatal UFO cases. If you liked it, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to check out my previous videos, because you're sure to find some interesting topics. Thanks for your attention. Bye.